Good morning, everyone. Super excited to be here. And, you know, it looks like a really good-looking bunch. I almost want to take a picture of you to put in the cloud. So I have a presentation this morning that hopefully will be somewhat fun, instructive, and bring a different view of cloud than just pure technology. So the title of the talk is The Power of Cloud Driving Business Innovation. But before I get started, let me tell you a little bit about myself. So I'm the managing director of Accenture Cloud Platform, which is, Steve said, we provide hybrid cloud services. And nobody knows what that is, right? Does anybody know what cloud is? Great, you're in the right place. So prior to this, I was actually the CTO at Cisco and also the founder of NewScale. NewScale was a small software company. One day I quit my job and I said to my wife, I'm starting my own company. And lo and behold, somehow it worked out. You know, we managed to raise venture capital way too much, grow it, and eventually we were acquired by Cisco. If you use Twitter, you can follow me at Rodrigo Flores, or you can follow my blog called Working Class CTO. In case you're wondering where this interesting accent is coming from, I'm originally from Chile, which is an island in South America. It's in the mainland. It's not surrounded by water, but it's one side is the Andes. On the other end is the Antarctica, the south, which is, you know, penguins mostly. And the north is the driest desert in the world. Nobody wants to go walking that one. And then the Pacific to the west. So we're quite isolated, and that's where I grew up. So the agenda for today, it really has 4 parts. We're going to go to just the basics of what is cloud. I'm going to then spend, hopefully, a good amount of time in what I'm calling Age of Miracles, which is the equivalent of stop and smell the flowers. There's a lot going on in technology that is actually changing how we live, how we relate to each other, and it changes, on the one hand, so quickly, but changes our practices so slowly, sometimes we don't really notice how it's changing. So I want to take a moment and pause and make it obviously interesting and fun for you. Then I'm going to cover the intelligent business cloud, which is what Accenture really sees as the next generation of the cloud evolution. And then I'm going to close by trying to make it down, what does it mean to you? What does it mean to businesses, both big businesses, but also small and medium-sized businesses? Are we good with this agenda? If you can't see the presentation well, I suggest you come up. I don't bite normally. So, especially for those of you in the background, you'll have a hard time seeing the presentation. So let's start with what is cloud, okay? The best way to explain it is nobody knows what cloud is, right? And there's a movie that came out last year with Cameron Diaz about a couple that makes an intimate tape that somehow gets lost. So they have this conversation and they lose it. They don't say it went up to the cloud. So it says, it went up to the cloud. And you can't get it down from the cloud? And Jason says, nobody understands the cloud, right? So the funny thing is, a lot of people live that way, right? Most people if I talk to my friends, my parents, my colleagues, cloud is kind of this strange concept that is difficult to follow. But I'm going to give you a short history. Originally, when you wanted to connect a machine to another machine, you put a cable. You know, you call your telco, and they would put a cable under the streets, and you connect them the two things together, right? That's the only way to connect things. At some point, 20 years, 30 years ago, it was possible to connect to a telco, and they somehow would route things around the world, and at the other end, you just needed to connect to a telco. You didn't have your own cable. And the way they drew that in diagrams was by putting a cloud, which is you connect to this thing, which is a cloud, and somehow the signal emerges at the other end, right? And so today, when we talk about cloud and what is cloud, we are meaning the following things. The main characteristics of a cloud is that it's available as a resource through a network. Is scalable and elastic. What I mean by elastic, it means that I don't have to worry about whether I have too much or too little. It's available infinitely. So I need one server, I get one server. I need 1,000 servers, I get 1,000 servers. It's consumption-based, so I only pay for what I use. which is really radical and important, because when you start looking at some of the things that you can do if you only need to pay for what you use. For example, a couple of years ago, I met people in Harvard Genomics where they need 10,000 machines over a weekend once a month. Imagine what it would be like to buy 10,000 machines that are sitting there, consuming space, consuming power, consuming labor for 28 days out of the month. So the ability to do genomics research over a weekend, right, where you really scale up and then completely get rid of them, changes the kind of game, changes the kind of innovation you can do. It's also rapidly provisioned, self-service. And what does that mean? Well, it means that I don't have to sign, I may sign a contract to begin with, but once the contract is signed, I just, I need it now, a few minutes later, a few seconds later, it's provisioned and ready for me. And this can be delivered both privately, meaning that it's my own cloud, nobody can get into it, it's not shared. Public, in which case I'm sharing something, it's like a hotel, right? Private is I have my own home and it's, and nobody can get into it, all my data is in my own home. Hotel is where I go in and buy it for a little while, right? And then of course there's hybrid, where I have parts that are my house, private, and parts that are public, and I can interconnect them. This is a new operating model. So it's not just technology, it's a new way of running a business, a new way of thinking about it. And there's a lot of challenges that can come out of that. One is, how do I manage the service? How do I secure it? I'm going to talk more about that later. What are the service level agreements that I need to have? What does my organization structure look like? How do I integrate this with my existing infrastructure and applications? So a lot of challenges. But the key implications and why it's become so popular is that it does one thing that is really important today in business. It moves you from a capital model to an operating model in terms of your expenses. So from CapEx to OpEx, it's eliminating the need for large capital commitments. The result of eliminating large capital commitments cannot be underestimated. It means that the business now is able to do a lot more experimentation at a low cost. You can try things out without necessarily, betting the ranch. You can do things much faster. You can say, I don't know if that's going to work, but I'm okay paying 10 cents an hour for a virtual machine, or $1 an hour, whatever the size is, or for $5, whatever it is, for the next 5 weeks. It won't break the bank. And if it works, great, we just scale it up. And if it doesn't work, we shut it down, no great loss. That ability to innovate, to take risks, without necessarily betting the farm, as I said, is a huge, huge game changer. So that's led to what I call the age of miracles, right? And I'm going to take you through a section. And it's really what's going on and how the cloud is changing things. The first of all, we have a huge growth in connected devices. We've gone from 2007, about 1 device for every 10 people on Earth, to now, in 2013, 7 devices per person. I mean, I have my iPad, my laptop, my iPhone, and probably have my Netflix and my Roku, and et cetera. I'm running out of IP addresses at home, right? So by 2020, it'll be about 70 devices per person. And that has to do with the fact that everything is getting connected. People, things, cars, houses, refrigerators, everything's getting connected. I'm going to take you through some of what that means. So the way that looks like is the growth of connected devices from 2007 to 2020, what's expected, from 1 in 10 to 70 per person, has profound implications for business and for our personal life. So one of the main things, which I call is new ways of living, new ways of working. But the fact that now we can rent applications like Office 365 or Salesforce directly from the cloud, consume them as we pay for them. The fact that we have rich application stores that are all available in devices like this, right? The fact that we tend to share, engage with our communities through social media, Facebook and Twitter and Pinterest, those are not minor things, right? And this is having an effect, right? The fact is that there are 1.8 billion pictures uploaded every single day to social media. Can you imagine that? 1.8 billion pictures per day. That's a lot of selfies, right? And then, about 300 million of that goes into Facebook, which generates something like 2.7 billion likes, and this is, by the way, a year ago. And when you have that many people liking that many pictures, when we have that many pictures, well, then interesting things happen in e-commerce. Interesting things happen in advertising, and the way it affects our small, medium, and large businesses. One of them, Gartner has, is the fact that half of retail logins are going to happen via social networks by the end of this year. So if you have an e-commerce, if you have any business that has a website, now you can put your own login, or you can say log in with Facebook. The advantage of putting in with Facebook or Twitter or social media is the richness of the information about your consumer you're able to gather is much, much higher. Of course, it means that your security requirements are much, much higher too. And this means that this becomes a very important new job. And I have this little thing at the bottom which says, Saks is hiring a senior manager for their social media team. That's about 4 years old, okay? And what that means is that there's new jobs, so new ways of living, new ways of working. And when I read that, I said, a senior manager for their social media team. Does that mean they're also hiring junior managers? Does that mean they have a department of social media? And the answer is yes. And it's not just big businesses, small businesses, they're consulting, a whole thing. So for those of you who have kids and teenagers who are sitting on the couch all day going like this, they might be training for the jobs of the future. Interesting changes, 3D printing. I think I clicked ahead. So Australian researchers create the first 3D printed jet engine. So 3D printing is one of those things that's about to revolutionize manufacturing, where now I can, instead of going to a store or having something manufactured, I have a giant printer and I give them some designs, and after a couple hours, a part goes out. And lots of different parts. Like a few months back, NASA had a problem at the space station, okay? Something broke down and they needed a part. Now NASA and the space station, it's pretty far from Earth, right? It's about the same distance from Hawaii to the mainland. So things take a while to get there and it's expensive to get them there. You know what I'm talking about, right? We're going to need a little more honesty in the room if we're going to be friends. So what we have here is, if you start thinking about that, that seems like, of course, that doesn't affect me. But in my neighborhood, there's a 3D printing shop. Okay, now we're getting serious. There's 3D printing shop, and which is, you can go there with your laptop and your design, sit there, like at Kinko's. Remember Kinko's when you go to photocopy things? You're there, I need to photocopy a part. And if you don't exactly need that, you can actually send it to them and they'll print it for you and you'll pick it up and you get your part or your thing. And as these things advance, they really change, right? And it turns out that it's not just jet engines on parts. You can do it with clothing. So this company, Body Kit, offers to basically scan your body and then they'll print fitness clothing specifically designed for the calories that you want to sweat out, the kind of lifestyle you have, the kind of sport that you have, and then they're able to put sensors to kind of tell you how you're doing. Now, that's interesting, but I'm much more excited about the fact that I can be watching, New York Fashion Week, and I say, I like that. Could you 3D print that to my house or 3D print it to my store? And by the way, I like this designer, Gucci, he is nice, but he doesn't really get island print. So could we have that in island print like this, right? So it changes clothing, it changes how. It also is going to have some effects in healthcare, and I'm going to, nothing that you guys don't know. It's costly, getting costlier, up to 17% of GDP now. 50% of those with chronic conditions don't don't take their medicine to manage the disease. It's $100 billion in avoidable costs. And yet, things are changing because of technology, and cloud-based technologies are a big part of that. So now you have a lot of providers using electronic healthcare records now. 84% of hospitals and academics are now using it. You have quality over quantity incentives being implemented, which is, don't tell me how many times you see this patient, tell me whether in fact this patient is getting better. And so I'll tell you, you report that, goes up in some cloud, and I'll pay you based on what you produce. And by 2015, something like 60% are going to be offering price transparency on the plans. So basically, say if you do these things, you know, we're able to give you a different price. And this is being supported by a number of cloud applications, like Teledoc, which is something that was really interesting at Cisco, which is basically telemedicine. And at one end, there's a set of things, you know, like your heart rate, your monitoring date, and your doctor is at the other end, somewhere 1,000 miles away, taking care of you, right? Or you have this group called Mango Health that basically is an adherence app. As I said, a lot of people don't take their medicine, and a lot of people don't do the things doctors recommend. So they found that for heart disease, with statin adherence, meaning like, are you taking your statins? With this app and the tracking, they get 84% of people taking their medicine versus 52% market average. Just an app, cloud-based system, all available, on demand, inexpensive, big change. So this kind of leads to this, what I call sensor yourself, right? This are pictures of the iWatch from Apple, just came out, or about to come out. And so here are some of the apps. One of them is you can now pay with it. You can call a car, your Uber with it. You can check in on a plane. Those are early apps. But the one that I'm most interested, you know, looking like this svelte guy that I aim to be someday, is the health app, right? So in fact, it can tell you stand up, right? Because one of the big diseases for people who work in offices is the fact that we sit on our tushies the whole day and we don't move enough. And so having applications that tell you and track, you know, this one, I look at every day, how many steps did I walk? So the recommendation is 10,000 steps. So you begin to do a little game with yourself, like, did I walk 10,000 steps? Oops, no, I'll make it up on the weekend. Sure, I will, right? So the fact that you have all the sensors tied to apps and tied to cloud services, whole new way of living, whole new ways of working. And this is beginning to have some interesting changes when you combine cloud applications, 3D printing. So one of the things that I kind of found is that higher fidelity bionic eyes are on the horizon. Users switch between normal and magnify by blinking your eye. Right? The ability to actually print new eyes, it's amazing. And the president at the State of the Union, and you can't read it, basically announced a new generation of prosthetics that can actually be moved through thoughts alone and that can feel warm to the touch. And remember 3D printing? First commercial 3D bioprinter fabricates organs to order. Hopefully you see why I call this Age of Miracles. And this is not the future. This is today. This is what's happening all around us. It's like William Gibson said, the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. So everything will be connected. As I said, oops, first commercial 3D printer. As I said, everything will be connected. Your car, home, your body. I think we talked a little bit about the body. And interestingly, cars will drive themselves in the future. Now, the future seems like a lot, but I live in the Bay Area, and if you go on Highway 101 between San Francisco and San Jose, you know, which is called Silicon Valley, you will see that car. You will see those cars driving on the street. They're self-driving cars, right? And it's freaky. You're looking at this thing, it's driving itself. The driver, there's a person, because they still had to have the laws, it said you have to have a person in the car, it's in the passenger seat, but the car is driving itself. And so to encourage self-driving cars, California passed a law last year that now allows self-driving cars. So we no longer need that person in the passenger seat. I'm really excited about this one because, you know, I don't really like driving that much. And for all of those of us who live in small towns, maybe we need a small car that drives itself and picks up the groceries and just brings them to us. And the thing is, by 2020, 5 years from now, so, you know, the 2020 model, which 100 million new cars are going to be internet connected. You know, a whole bunch are already, right? So when you have internet connection in your car, internet connection in your pocket, and your sensing, the kinds of applications, the kinds of things we'll be able to do are outstanding. And I don't want to be Pollyannish, so, you know, everything's going to be great in the future. There are challenges, and one of them is security. And security is one of those services that I think is really important and growing. So, because all these things will need security, my car, my body, my phone, my watch, my computer. And the number of active threats groups is rising rapidly. This is from Mandiant Security, and it's at the bottom, it's a credit to them, which is 4 times since 2011. And what's changed a lot is that it's not just now hackers in the basement of their mom, you know, and people who are like eating too many Cheetos and just playing too many games. You now have nation states, you know, essentially at war with each other, hacking into each other, trying to compromise systems wherever they can. To the point that now, if you connect a PC without antivirus, without firewall, to a network, it's hacked within 15 minutes. The average hacking time is now 15 minutes. So you really, before you connect anything to the internet, you need to think about security. And this, I think, leads to some interesting things, which is, if we connect everything, my fridge was caught sending spam emails in a botnet attack. So, which, you know, is bad. I was much more concerned that my intelligence scale in my bathroom, which is Wi-Fi enabled, was going to be talking to my fridge about my diet. So what does it all mean in terms of this age of miracle? Is that we're living in a world that's going to be actually, funnily enough, because of increasing globalization, it's going to be more local than ever. Because distance collapses. If distance collapses, then what's going on around me and how do I engage around me? I don't care if, you know, if I search pizza, I don't care if the pizza is in New York. I care if the pizza is within my, you know, driving distance or delivery distance. It's going to be social. In fact, that, interestingly enough, for millennials, those are people born, you know, around the turn of the century, the majority of their shopping recommendations come from social media. They don't come from advertising. My son's 24. He's never read a newspaper. It's, you know, he gets all his news and knowledge and recommendations through Facebook and social media. My daughter through the same thing, Pinterest. It's all mobile. You know, many of them don't even want a laptop. They just live on their phone. And you can see them. You can recognize millennials because if you go to an airport, they're the guys with the plug, you know, trying to recharge their phones. It's personalized. It's not something generic for everybody. It's really around you. And it's engaged in ways that we were not able to engage before. And in some ways, I find that really encouraging, that we're moving from the industrialized, non-personalized, you're nobody but a number, to now a world where people know you, right? And I'm going to talk a little bit about what's going on now with some of the new services. They know you, that you know them, you set conversations. And all of this means is that the arms race is over. And what I mean by that is that in the old days, and I'm going to repeat this again at the end, in the old days, big companies had the big systems. They could do things that small and medium-sized businesses couldn't do. That's no longer the case. The same customer relationship management system that the largest companies in the world use is available to you for $70 a month. The same email that they use is available to you for free. The same tools are available. You know, everything's available at such low cost because cloud services enable this consumption model, right? Where I don't have to make a huge capital commitment up front. So in some ways, there's no excuse for innovation. You don't want to be the person putting the no in innovation, okay? I don't want to be that guy. And these tools are available, as I said, democratically. It's not, some people have them and others don't. And horizontally, in the sense that they spread out through the, you know, immediately globally. It's, And I have some examples about later on in education where something goes out on the internet, a new service, and it's available in Brazil, in India, and the US. And some kid wanting to learn something can learn it at the same time. Things don't diffuse slowly like they used to be, where like they go from one place and then go to another. It's all diffused globally instantly. So it really changes things. And my favorite example, I'm going to give you 1984 versus 2014. Some of you may have seen this picture. So in 1984, you had your laptop, your phone, your Polaroid camera, your Walkman. Remember those things? Right? Now, one iPhone has all those things. No, this is one of the reasons, by the way, why Radio Shack's going out of business. That was their business. That was a Radio Shack picture from 1984. Age of miracles, huh? Big changes. And in terms of the arms race illustrated, I found this picture really interesting. What you see there is a forklift loading a giant hard drive, IBM hard drive in 1956, that had the total capacity of 5 megabytes. You know, world class. You know, I don't want to even know how many hundreds of thousands of millions of dollars that was. I mean, in order to store 5 megabytes of data, first of all, you have to have a whole department figuring out what not to store because it was expensive, right? So you had as many people figuring out no, 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 as people saying maybe, maybe, maybe. Today, those 5 megabytes, for most teens, that's called a Taylor Swift song. So we're living in an age of warehouse scale machines. What you see here is Google's data center on the Columbia River, Oregon. So when you ask, where's the cloud? That's where the cloud is, okay? Inside, there are tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of servers, storage, et cetera. And they're all connected to the internet super fast. It costs hundreds of millions of dollars to build it, more billions of dollars. I think they're spending something like, I don't know, tens of billions of dollars a year building this. Well, what does it mean to you? Well, last week, basically, they offer 1 gigabyte for a penny a month, which means in 2015, you could buy 200 IBM 1956 machines for a penny a month. Does anybody even keep the pennies anymore? No? I put it in the penny jar, right? It's like, I don't even want to wrinkling. It's a penny a month, so for a gigabyte. Amazing. Right, so that's what I mean by the arms race is over. Our ability to have the same power as any large organization, it's all there. We're getting $1 billion in investment for a penny a month, right? And so I'm going to finish the section here before I move to Intelligent Business Cloud by showing you a picture of the Fort River Rouge plant, which is the other change in the industrial revolution. This is where they made the Model T car, right? Any color as long as it's black. It's on a river. It looks like a warehouse. And all that factory is available to you for, I forget what it was, $200 and some odd per car. So the more things change, the more things stay the same, right? So we live in an age of miracles, but we're not ungrounded from where we came from and who we are. So I wanted to now shift over and talk about the Intelligent Business Cloud and move over, make sure I'm good on time. I'm good on time. So we cover a little bit of the kinds of things that are possible with cloud services, how inexpensive they are, how they're available. And many companies are essentially making use of cloud, not necessarily understanding they are. If you use Google Mail or Yahoo Mail, if you use sharing sites, if you use social media, you are already using a cloud service, right? But we have not really spent any time thinking about how we can leverage that in the enterprise, right? So more work needs to be done to deliver that. So what we're going to talk here is what Accenture sees as the next iteration of cloud and how in its business relevancy. So we call that the Intelligent Business Cloud, which is fundamentally systems that are open, which means that you can plug in different things, they're scalable, means you can start small and then grow them as you need them, that they're integrated so they don't leave your past behind. They take your existing infrastructure, your existing systems, applications, processes, and bring them into what we call the hybrid cloud landscape. So you have single point of control over both the present and the future of your infrastructure. And this is because today, as I said, as we talked earlier, every business is under pressure to innovate, right? In less time, with fewer resources, greater flexibility, everybody is under pressure. And the question really is, how do we do that? And for that, we need a shift in our mindset. And I'm going to give you the punchline at the end, which is fundamentally, if capital costs are not the issue, if the arms race is over, if the internet's here, our limitation at this point might be our imagination more than anything. So if we have an old world thinking, in this new world, we are really going to have a big challenge in growing and innovating, and we're going to miss some opportunities. So there's a mind shift and a question, and you're all here because I think you see that in fact you need to understand what's going on in technology, understand what's going on in cloud in order to prepare yourselves for the future that, as I said, in many cases is already here, right? So this recipe for success, as we call it, basically has what we call them digital leaders, people who really are thinking about how to use these cloud services for driving competitive advantage and driving speed and agility, integration, and then everything as a service. When we talk about cloud, some people sometimes asking, well, is it cheaper? Can we reduce costs? And the answer is, yeah, probably, but that's not the interesting thing. Today, we're living in a world where speed and agility are much more important than cost reduction. Because if you're paying a penny, per gigabyte, there's not a lot of interesting work to be done by reducing that to a ninth of a penny, right? The 10% you might save on a penny is not relevant. But the 3 days you might save in serving a customer, very relevant, right? Because, and I kind of like to say, we're not living in a world where the big eat the small. We're living in a world where the fast eat the slow. So fundamentally, cloud, I think, is about business agility, right? Which then, of course, requires, okay, if I can do that, then, okay, it's good that I can do this fast here, but now I need to bring it back to the stuff that I already have, which is why integration, interoperability, being able to connect these things together in a hybrid model becomes so important. And so this intelligent business cloud is really about defining the future. And in the sense that when you have collaboration, everything as a service, you have mobility, you have social, you have analytics, the question becomes, how do we put it all together, right? So you have at the bottom your intelligent infrastructure, right? This compute, network storage. You have your intelligent applications, data, that's intelligent data, which is the data itself knows where it belongs and what it needs to do. And now we can begin to put it together in some interesting way. And we reduce that, and I'm going to take you through this build out in a second. And so a little hard to see, so I don't usually read slides, as you probably can tell. But fundamentally, what we mean by intelligent business cloud is the ability to connect applications, data, and processes, span multiple cloud vendors. You will use public clouds, you will use private clouds. If any reasonable size enterprise today that is engaging with their consumers is going to be on social media, so that means that some part of your application is going to be out in the cloud, connecting to that Facebook for the logging, getting those likes, right? And on the other hand, you still have private data that you're going to keep in your data center, and you don't want to move that, and you may not be able to move that. So you'll need ways to migrate and operate these applications and govern them across these clouds. And of course, you have to answer the question, what is it all costing, right? And are we managing to our SLAs in order to minimize the risk? Because as we saw earlier, we have some big nation states that want to get into your data. So at the bottom, you have things like you need a hybrid cloud platform. You need to have portability between them, management, a single dashboard to manage all this stuff. And that's where, when you put it all together, that's what we mean by the intelligent business cloud. I hope that the earlier section and this section put things together, but if they haven't, let's talk then about where we are now, the next final section. Age of disruption and age of opportunities, and as I said, what does it mean to me? What does it all what is it all going to signify? And one of the things is that everything will be a service. And personalized, on-demand, pay-as-you-go, no upfront capital cost, affordable. So let's talk about why that's so. And the reason that's so is that there is a huge shift in the democratization of technology that is, as I said, available to everybody, and it includes making things programmable. So there's a gentleman, Marc Andreessen, Marc Andreessen, for those of you who don't know, is the person and his team who invented the web browser. So when we talk about the internet today, you're looking at the guy who invented the web browser. And he wrote this interesting article called Why Software is Eating the World. And basically the notion here is that you take anything, you add intelligence and software, and you change and disrupt the business. So for example, is it media or is it tech? BuzzFeed, right? BuzzFeed is an online service, hugely growing, right? You have Craigslist, which completely has killed newspaper classifieds advertising. You take the old thing, classifieds, technology, internet, and a cloud service, completely disrupts and kills. Today, newspapers are under severe strains in most places or out of business. Is it publishing or tech, right? I was talking about newspapers. Media or tech, right? You have Netflix, which is really affecting cable TV. Is it retail or tech? Amazon fundamentally altered the retail landscape, right? You have Walmart, you have Best Buy, you have Circuit City, you have Tower Records. Remember going to the record store? There are no record stores. Remember going to the bookstore? I used to go to the bookstore and record store every weekend. No more. They're gone. I miss them. I don't really like to touch the book, I just like to browse the book. And then I go on Amazon and order it, so. Yeah, so. I kill Tower Records, I feel so awful. So software is eating the world, and this begins to kind of change things, right? Remember we talked about education? So what you have here in front of you is a picture of Coursera. They offer courses, university courses online. One of my, and all of this are available, many of them for free, university quality courses from MIT, Stanford, some of the best universities and professors in the world, from programming to philosophy to law, all available online. And today, they have about 7 million users. Can you think of a university that has 7 million students? And remember I said it's all globally on day one? Well, this is their global distribution, right? So yes, 35% are in North America, but 23% in Latin America, 11% in Africa, Oceania, Europe's 25%, and Asia, right? Obviously language being important. And I used to read all kinds of interesting books when I was younger. I would have just been crazy, like sitting there taking courses on programming, philosophy. So the university is being disrupted. And this is being disrupted for a couple of reasons. The availability of these online courses, and the fact that all of those who pay for college education, we know that it's really expensive. In fact, this graphic shows the cost of university education as it has grown from 1965 to 2015. The way to read the upper button, it says, the way it says, like, it takes 30 weeks of an average wage to pay the average annual college tuition fees, room and board. So those who are older, we used to pay almost nothing. I don't want to say when I went to college because then I'd be dating myself. But if it takes 30 weeks of an average salary to pay for college, and it then takes, plus you have to eat and have, you have room and board and pay taxes and do other things, this is a big challenge. So in this big challenge, you have online education emerging as a big change, right? And this is going to affect in colleges. There's a few weeks back, Sweetbriar College, a rural college that still had an $85 million endowment, decided that they just didn't have the enrollment to support that in the future, and they shut down after 100 some odd years, right? And we'll see a lot more colleges shut down as enrollment. People can't afford it, but they can also have it online. And the question becomes really, for young people, what are they going to do? It's an interesting space, and I'm going to talk more about it later. So we also reimagined how people meet. You know, there's about 70,000 bars and nightclubs in the USA. About 65% of those are in Waikiki. At least that's what I can tell. And now instead, people are going on Tinder and other things that, of course, those of us who are married have never used. We just heard about. And they do the swiping and the whole thing to meet people, right? And then you have interesting things like Airbnb. Anybody here heard of, use Airbnb? Some of you. So Airbnb, which stands for Air Bed and Breakfast, allows people to rent rooms or houses to other people that need a place to stay. So it's beginning to disrupt the hotel industry a little bit, which is a big deal here. And they've had 6 million guest stays last year, with over 500,000 listings already, growing 83% year over year. And really, it's a global phenomenon. My wife last year went to Paris. She didn't stay at a hotel. She found a nice studio in Paris, in a very quaint area with my wife. She went with my daughter. And they stayed there the whole week. When she got there, the little studio was actually in an apartment building that was all small studios, not for a living necessarily because they were too small, but for people who were visiting Paris and didn't want the hotel experience. They wanted to have a Paris experience right in the middle of the city. So this person had converted this building into an Airbnb, if you will, specialized studio. So they were all DVDs about Paris, maps, guides. It was all set up perfectly for American tourists to show up and experience Paris as a local, right? Very interesting. You know, what happens is it's not really about Airbnb for me. It's about these ancillary businesses that begin to arise out of it. The people who now have extra room and say, hey, I can make a living of it, or I can certainly help pay the rent. Grubhub is a service that lets you order from restaurants online. They have all the menus. You go click, click, click. I want to deliver, or I want pickup, and sometime later, somebody shows up with your food. So they've had something like 39 million meal orders, growing 74% a year. Probably I'm accountable for a fair bit of it. And restaurants are going all of it. So it begins to change how restaurants think about their strategy. You know, before it was all walk-in. Yes, if you're a fancy restaurant, if you're a fancy restaurant, yes, people will go in and know you and you'll get reviews. But for a lot of restaurants, how do you get consumers other than walk-in? Well, Grubhub, and there are many other services like that, begin to change things quite a bit. The one that's most interesting to me, because I've had a lot of experience, is Uber. Uber is a cloud service with an application where you load the application and you say, I want a car, and they have a variety of cars, UberX, where it shows up and says, yep, we'll have your car in 4 minutes. They already have your credit card. A car shows up, you take it, you exit. You don't need to pay anybody because it's already paid through Uber, your credit card. So none of that fumbling for change and what the tip is. It's all, you know, you feel like a big shot, by the way. You know, like, yeah, I'm getting out of my limo. And it's global today. It's everywhere. The company was recently valued at $47 billion, which is about the equivalent of the entire taxi industry globally. In the space of 3 years, this company has gone from non-existence to being the dominant transportation player. Interesting. Well, what does it mean to me? Well, I've spent a lot of time talking to Uber drivers because people say, well, you mean any stranger can show up and just in a car? I go, well, they're less a stranger than a taxi because you get the license of the car, you get the name of your driver, you get the picture of the driver. So it will say, you know, Steve is coming to pick you up in a Toyota Prius, you know, license something, something, so you can find him. And they are, going back to the social, remember, media, stuff, reputation. At the end of the drive, you rate them. And in rating them, if they maintain a certain rating, they get a bonus from Uber. So they're extremely encouraged to be pleasant and nice. I've never had a bad Uber drive. They'll have water for you, many of them. It'll be like, you give you a complete limo experience, regardless of the car. And interestingly, I asked them, how is it going? How do you like it? So a gentleman, Mohammed from Bangladesh, in London. He said, sir, I'm really, really excited about this. I've always wanted to have my own business, and now I feel that I'm my own businessman, and I like to treat my customers, so I maintain a rating of 4.7, so that means 200 pounds a week extra in bonuses from Uber. So he's delighted. Then I meet last week a young man, probably 23, 24, Alex. And he came from San Diego to live in the Bay Area. He says, we just drove up, and he was driving Uber, and he gets to the Bay Area. He says, there's so many people here driving Uber, and there's such a big opportunity. I called my roommates, and I told them, come up here. We are going to drive Ubers, right? So they moved up there. They were driving Ubers. And they said, so what happened? Are you going to college? He goes like, no, I was going to college, but look, I realized the only thing I faced was unemployment and debt. So until I figure out what I want to do, I dropped out of college because it doesn't make sense going back to the cost of college, right? So what are you doing? Well, I'm driving Uber. Well, I'm thinking old-fashioned, being old. I'm going like, what, a career? He says, but my buddies and I were starting a business where we are now going to be buying cars that Uber approves of, and we're getting other drivers. So this young man, 24 years old, has figured out an ancillary business, an opportunity out of the fact that you have a cloud-based service, that you have an application, an inexpensive phone, and a commitment to service, right? Very nice man. And because you rate them. Now here's the funny thing that people didn't know, and still it's not published. At the end of the ride, they rate you as well. So what happens, we begin to have an economy that is a lot more like a small village. They know you in some way, reputation-wise. You know them, reputation-wise. And there's an incentive, like in the village, for everybody to behave, be nice to each other, because there are consequences. Next time, if you're a bad client, then nobody will pick you up. What an amazing world, huh? And the opportunities are so many. And so, the same thing's happening in grocery, right? You have, grocery stores, and now you have services online like Instacart and now Amazon Fresh, and they're growing pretty fast. 47% of online transactions now use free shipping. Same-day local delivery is the next big thing. And so the future enterprise is going to be an agile, very fierce competitor. We're going to go from a business today where we have mostly fixed costs, high capital requirements, right? Maintenance and run costs from our infrastructure, security issues that we need to deal with, business lagging, outdated infrastructure, where all those wonderful things I was talking about, all of a sudden it's like, can we get our logins through Facebook? No, because our network is not really set up for that. Got to update the network, right? Our infrastructure, well, we don't have the sufficient capacity. And the budget cycle is next year, so we have to wait another year. And it takes 6 to 8 weeks to provision a machine and 5 months to approve it. So really we're looking, and the world's changing around us, right? So cloud services break through that logjam where the pay by the drink, right? Responsive, asset light, capital light, allows us to do things that we couldn't do before. It becomes this agile enterprise that we talked about with 3 freedoms. And so I thought that rather than explain it into business terms of ROI, total cost of ownership, I'm going to talk about any business leader, anybody who's run a business. And that's, as I told you, I was the founder of NewScale. And at one point, to be a founder of a tech company means you buy a desk at Office Max, right? And you put it in your home office, right? And you tell the kids, when daddy is working, he's at the office, right? Because you have to have the pretense, otherwise being like, being unemployed and being an entrepreneur are pretty much the same thing until you make something happen. So the 3 freedoms that I looked at are the freedom to experiment, as I said earlier, right? Being able to try new things, being able to see if they work or not, being able not to have, and then that's coupled with freedom number 2, the freedom to fail. Not everything works. Not everything should work, right? A lot of people have had great success later in life, not at the beginning. But if bankruptcy, if the ability to not feed your family, pay the rent, is the result of your experimentation, then people are going to be very reluctant to experiment, rightly so. So the cloud services, being capital light, agile, available on demand, really change the economics of experimentation on trying new things, right? It's what lets, a guy like Alex, 24 years old, think that he can be the next Uber franchisee in San Rafael, California, of all places. It's what lets, Mohammed, come from Bangladesh to London and establish his own business, after 40 years of being a chauffeur, where he says, I spend most of my time just waiting around for people and not making much money. And this freedom to go fast is if when things work out, right? Sometimes things do work out and we're surprised and go like, now we got to go fast. And go like, oh, we can't, right? So those are the three freedoms that I believe are the most interesting things in cloud. So I'm going to close out here because it becomes a time where we think, okay, let's put it all together, right? Rodrigo, it's great that we see we're age of miracles and age of disruptions and how cloud services really change our ability to innovate and move fast. So what is it? What do I take out of that, right? It's like, other than the free breakfast and free lunch and free beer, which is actually pretty good. So when I think about small, medium-sized businesses, right, what small, medium-sized businesses do really well, right, is listen to the client. They have an intimate relationship with clients, the ability to really understand the concerns what drive the client, not what they're ready to buy, what they're willing to buy, but to really engage in a way that I understand what you need, let me see what I can do, what new offer I can develop, what I can come to, is to be able to develop a personalized experience, which often big companies, and I work, as I said, in small companies, and I now work in very large companies, it's very difficult for us in large companies sometimes to deliver that personalized experience because we have to move so many people and so many departments, it's just not worth it. The return on investment is not there. The ability to act fast, as I told you, the fast eat the slow. Big companies, often we have to mobilize hundreds, if not thousands of people to do something. Small, medium-sized companies can get everybody in a room, make a decision and move. Big companies, we have really talented people all over the place, and unfortunately that's the problem. They're all over the place. So being able to bring that person who knows how to address that problem to that meeting in that moment, right? Well, we may have the expertise, but we have to bring it from somewhere else, right? And when you combine what small, medium-sized companies do really well with the fact that the arms race is over and capital requirements are really much smaller, it should be a great opportunity. It should be something that we should be bothered if we're not coming up with something new. I'd be bothered. But the thing that's important is that that's not enough. We need to have two things. One is develop what I'm going to call digital literacy. And I say code there, but it's not just the ability to program. And not that you want to be a coder or a programmer, but to understand what that brings to a business. Why is software eating the world? It's because I can create programs, I can create software that I can couple with my existing offerings and bring intelligence, right? To be able to change the way I deliver offers, to be able to change the way I price things. So digital literacy has become really, really important. And that's something that I would encourage you to do today and get as much as possible out of this conference, which is fantastic. And then imagination, because we're living in a world where imagination is really our limit. And with that, I want to thank you. Mahalo. You could have been anywhere. You chose to be here with us this morning. I appreciate that. Thank you.